in sunny Las Vegas. Brad, how you making out today?
Doing well. I like how you always say sunny Las Vegas because it pretty much always is sunny Las Vegas.
Yeah, I don't know why I say that. Just a weird habit. Whenever I go there, it is nice and sunny, though. So
Yeah.
happy to see that is continuing into the fall here for you. Okay, so you have two best bets that we're going to get into momentarily, but quickly, let's kind of recap a little bit about what we saw over the weekend. Of course, a couple big headlines here. Washington beats Oregon in one of the best games that you're ever going to see. Washington now up to plus 800 on the national championship odds board. They're tied with Florida and Ohio State for, I think it's the third best odds there on the odds board. So, what was your big takeaway from that game?
Well, number one, I mean, as you put on the fan hat and remove the gambling aside, obviously, one of the biggest games of the year lived up to the billing. A very exciting back and forth game that went down to the very final play. So, as a college football fan, you love to see college football deliver, especially. I mean, obviously, the sport is very southern, regionally speaking. Midwest would be the second region, not necessarily Pacific Northwest. So, from that perspective, I was glad to see that type of performance. As far as the gambling perspective, obviously, I say this a lot. Just because it's the biggest game of the week doesn't mean it's the best value bet. We had the
Mm-hmm.
game pushed and the over hit by what, a point and a half. So I think that's a lesson a little bit that needs to be learned there. From a game perspective, I thought Oregon graded out a little bit better than Washington, but obviously, Oregon didn't convert on the high leverage fourth down situations. Dan Lanning's very aggressive for the analytics crowd. They love him. And from the game management, old school people probably don't like him. They probably would have wished that Oregon would have kicked some field goals there. They probably would have came away with a win. But that's been his mo the first 2 years, and I didn't really change either team's power rating that much, and that's pretty much to expect it when a game pushes.
Okay, so big story number two, big spotlight game on Saturday night, USC, Notre Dame. Caleb Williams was not good. He threw three interceptions in that game. USC loses their first game of the season. Williams has now plummeted down the Heisman Futures odds board. He's been, the favorite for almost forever. Then we saw Penix the past couple weeks start to make up some ground on him. But Caleb Williams, seventh best odds now at 20 to 1 over at DraftKings. Penix Jr. minus 140 favorite. A handful of games left of the season, obviously. Anyway, Caleb Williams can get back into this race?
No, I think he lost the Heisman Trophy on Saturday
Wow.
night. He was going to be always up against it because we've only seen one repeat winner of the Heisman. So it's just they're going to pick apart your game, and you're going to be under a much different scrutiny than anybody else. So that's the reason why I made 10 Heisman bets in the offseason, and Caleb Williams wasn't one of them. I will say this though, Michael Penix being favored over the field. I'll tell you what, that's a little pricey as far as I'm concerned. I don't think he should be favored over the field, to be honest with you. So if you have someone like a JJ McCarthy or somebody else that you think, Dylan Gabriel, that you like, I think there's some slight value there because I would not have Penix greater than 50% chance. But I get the big picture, though. Caleb Williams throwing 3 picks against Notre Dame in a big spotlight game, lost the Heisman.
Okay, another big story occurred on Friday night. I got to ask you about it. A couple of weeks ago, you said the party was over for Colorado when they were going into conference play. 100% right on that, Brad. So what was it, a 29-point lead that they blew? So what do you make of Colorado and Deion Sanders after that performance on Friday night?
Yeah, I wish I would have had Stanford live money line. I think it was up to 70 to 1 when the Cardinal were down 29-0 in the game. But I mean, that's a devastating loss for Colorado. Not only, from the national media spotlight sort of thing, but I mean, this is a team that had realistic chances of getting a bowl game, which would have been a tremendous season for them coming off a 1-win season. Now you look at the rest of the schedule. Now they're on a bye this week, but their remaining 5 games, Joe, Colorado's going to be an underdog in all 5 games. I mean, that's how good the Pac-12 is. Their easy games against Arizona State and Stanford, the 2 worst teams in the Pac-12, are done and over with. You thought a game maybe against Arizona was going to be at home, going to be easy. What's Arizona doing the last 3 weeks? Almost upset Washington, almost upset USC, and then went out on the road and beat Washington State 44-6. So what was perceived to be your easiest game down the stretch it isn't going to be that easy. In fact, Colorado's going to be a dog. So I'd be very surprised if this team got the 6 wins at this point. I'll be honest with you. I think I'll be surprised if they win another game. There's your hot take.
Damn, there we go. I like it. Okay, last question before we get into your picks here. So we take a look at the top of the national championship futures odds board. Georgia and Michigan neck and neck. Then we have a bit of a drop off to Washington, Ohio State, Florida State, Penn State, Oklahoma, Texas, Alabama, and then Oregon 25-1. Then you have a pretty big drop off down to North Carolina. So my question to you, who do you have number one in your power ratings?
I have Michigan number one, and now by a little bit of margin, a couple points ahead of
Wow.
Georgia. So that it's newsworthy on this front. I've been doing power ratings 10 years. I've only had 5 different programs ever number one in my power ratings. Obviously, Alabama, Ohio State, Clemson, LSU was in there, and obviously Georgia the last couple of years. The new number one is the Michigan Wolverines, deservedly so. I know that they haven't played the toughest of schedules. You can't control once a schedule's set who you play. You can control how you play. And the last 3 weeks, what Michigan's done to Big Ten competition is elite. It looks very similar to what Alabama and Georgia have been doing to college football the last decade. So Michigan's number one, not only because of their performance, impressive performances the last 3 weeks, but Georgia obviously not a very good performance against Vanderbilt. Georgia's only covered 1 game. And breaking news just before the show came on here, Brock Bowers, the All-American tight end, generational type talent at tight end, ankle surgery for him. He's going to miss the next 4 to 6 weeks for Georgia. He is a rare non-quarterback. It's worth about a point to the point spread. So you got to downgrade Georgia a little bit further.
Okay, there we go. Wolverines, number one for Brad. Okay, so let's get into a couple of picks here. Ones that you hit the click button on early in the week. Let's start off with USC. They're favored by 6.5 versus Utah. What do you think? A good bounce back spot for them?
Yeah, I know this won't be popular considering I gave out USC and they got their teeth kicked down their throat against Notre Dame to say the least. But I think a couple fronts. Number one, you mentioned bounce back. I do expect a bounce back. We mentioned Caleb Williams lost the Heisman. If he's truly an elite competitor off his worst game of his career, you would expect him to bounce back in a big way. Number two, the Notre Dame game. While Notre Dame deserved to win, Notre Dame deserved to cover, obviously. Not sure that you look at the box score that should have been a 28-point Notre Dame win when USC was -5 in turnovers, got stopped on downs twice, and then also gave up a kick return touchdown. I mean, the reality was with all that going on, it was an 11-point game with 10 minutes left prior to the kick return touchdown. You thought USC might have a shot at that point to come back. So misleading final there. And also, let's get in front of the line move. I'm guessing this line closes 7. 7's a key number. Last I checked. Let's go ahead and lay 6.5 here with the Trojans.
Okay, next up, big game, Penn State, Ohio State. We have a total of 47. What do you think for this one?
Going under. Main reason is I think it's going to close a couple points lower than this. We saw the market already hit this a little bit this morning. Let's talk from a personnel aspect. We got the number 1 and number 2 defenses in the country as far as yards per play allowed. So 2 elite defenses. And then on the opposite side, you got 2 offenses that leave a little bit to be desired. Penn State doesn't push the ball down the field. In fact, they're dead last coming into last week as far as deep ball throws. Dead last out of 133 teams in the country. Ohio State, a lot of people are buying Kyle McCord. I'm not. You want to talk about changing narratives. If Notre Dame's secondary player didn't drop the interception on that late drive, what's the perception of Kyle McCord? I think there'd still be some questions there. Then also look, these two teams have played pretty much a game apiece as far as big-time games. And what'd you see in those games? Penn State against Iowa, Ohio State against Notre Dame. We saw 2 scores with a combined score of 31 total points. This screams to me, Joe, 17-14, 20-17.
Okay, I like it. Before we let you go, we're going to put you on the spot. A question from the chat. No official pick required, obviously. SG3 ask, question for Brad. Auburn laid an egg last week, however, been bullish on them ATS most of the year. Do you like them at home versus Ole Miss?
I did. I bet that game. Let's go ahead and hopefully get a +7 out of there. I took 7.5, but I will take Auburn +7 there. They played a tough schedule. It was a bad performance last week, but I do like them as a home underdog this week, and I have made that bet personally.
There we go. Auburn. Okay, so that's it, Brad. Great segment today. Of course, we will have you back on Thursday to discuss more of the bigger games taking place this upcoming weekend. So thanks again for joining us, and best of luck with your handicapping this week.
All right. Thanks for having me, Joe.